Nation, I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. Looking forward to finishing the week off strong, getting ready for Senior Day in Athens tomorrow against Charlotte. And for so many families, a chance to take some young Georgia fans maybe to the game that sometimes the big ones like Texas or Ole Miss, not exactly appropriate for small children. The game against Charlotte tomorrow, a little more appropriate there. And so we know for many young Georgia fans, this will be their first chance to be between the hedges. And we look forward to hearing more stories about those who get a chance to enjoy that. Speaking of young pups, also looking forward to seeing some of the still developing dogs get their chance to play tomorrow against the Niners and demonstrate, if you want to compare back to September when Georgia was playing the tune-up games against the likes of Marshall and Austin Peay, just how much growth this team has seen. We're going to cover all of that today. We're also going to get into some recruiting rumors with Jeff Sentell, give you final thoughts on the weekend's biggest games, and so much more. Going to be a great Friday. Glad to have you with us for it. Also, to all the high school teams playing in the second round of the state playoffs tonight, best of luck to you on that. We're obviously watching that very closely, too, and I look forward to seeing you tonight, Grayson High School for Grayson and Colquitt County on Atlanta News First. So it's a busy weekend. We're getting ready for it all. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Glory, glory to old Georgia. Heroes have graced the field before you. Men with hearts, bodies, and minds for which the entire Bulldog Nation can be justifiably proud. The tradition of unbridled excellence demonstrated by these individuals and many others spans more than a full century. And now, a new breed of bulldogs stands ready to take the field of battle, to assume the reins of their Georgia forebears, to continue that tradition, understanding that there is no tradition more worthy of envy, no institution worthy of such loyalty as the University of Georgia. As we prepare for another meeting between the hedges, let all the Bulldog faithful rally behind the men who now wear the red and black, with two words, two simple words which express the sentiments of the entire Bulldog Nation. Go Dogs!
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Great way to start the Friday show right there with our good guy, Cody Chaffins, putting together a wonderful video to celebrate tomorrow, what will be on Senior Day for Georgia, the very first Georgia game that some young fans will attend. We hear from parents all the time that say, yeah, looking forward to taking my kids to the Charlotte game, or sometimes you also get some of this at the beginning of the season too. And it's fun to think about. I still have vivid memories of when I was the young kid being taken to these Georgia games the very first time. And now I've had the experience of taking my kids to their first Georgia game years ago and watching as some of you are now doing that with your young children here right now. And we continue to pass down this tradition of Georgia football. And tomorrow we think is going to be a great day to do that. It's also a great day to celebrate Georgia seniors and what's going to be their final scheduled home game. Who knows what the postseason holds for us. But we'll talk about everything you're going to see against Charlotte here coming up in just a little bit on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. I want to begin with this, though. Obviously, in addition to the winding down of the regular season, we also are ramping up towards the beginning of December and National Signing Day. And as we get closer to that, there are no shortage of rumors out there, maybe as it relates to Georgia. Some of this certainly as it relates to Georgia, but across the college football landscape overall. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to get very deep in detail with Jeff Sentell on exactly what might be going on with Georgia, in particular with five-star quarterback commit Jared Curtis. Let me show you something that was on social media, and this will just spur us along for the conversation that we do need to have today. Many of you know who Hayes Fawcett is. Hayes is the graphics expert for On3, now known as Rivals, their recruiting arm, now known as Rivals, and he's got close relationships with a lot of the recruits because he does a lot of their edits when they commit or whatever. He's the one that makes that. He's probably a little bit like a lot of the national recruiting folks, gotten a little maybe hyperbolic in the last few months or whatever else, but he does terrific work. His graphics are obviously sought after, and because they are so sought after, he has very strong relationships with a lot of these recruits. And in light of the conversations that he has, this is where the hyperbolic part perhaps comes in just a bit. Every now and then he'll tease ahead what he believes might be coming on social media. And he gave us a gif of the dominoes falling. And yesterday on the X platform, he wrote, expecting a lot of 2026 quarterback movement here in the coming weeks and days. He says, hashtag flip season. And a lot of Georgia fans were left to wonder, wait, is he talking about our guy? Is he talking about Jared Curtis? And this is probably going beyond just the natural tendency of some fans to have something always in their back pocket to be worried about. There has been some reporting or rumors lately as it relates to the five-star quarterback Jared Curtis at the visit he took a couple of weeks ago to Nashville to see Vanderbilt, that the aftermath of that is maybe still being felt, and that there was a story for instance, this week with Steve Wiltfong, big national guy, works for Rivals, talking about, if Vanderbilt can just get its NIL offer together, and if they can just get a contract extension for Clark Lee, then maybe there's a chance that Jared Curtis could still be in play for Vanderbilt. Now, Jeff Sentell's also had some reporting on this in recent days at DawgNation.com from Curtis's representatives that actually, at least as of a few days ago, when Jeff wrote the story, there's been no NIL offer from Vanderbilt to Curtis, at least nothing official in writing, if you want to say it that way. And so, therefore, that whatever NIL offer might change the game, according to Curtis's own people, well, that hasn't happened yet. So what exactly is going on here? Is Curtis really in play to flip from Georgia? Is this something that Georgia fans should be worried about? It's probably Jeff Sentell's opinion that matters to you more on this than mine. And as I said before, in a few minutes, we're going to do a whole bunch with Jeff on this. Now, I will tell you, Jeff actually had some stuff he had to do today, so we recorded this yesterday afternoon. So already have secured the interview, already know that it's good. We're going to let you hear this coming up in a couple of minutes. We'll get into Jeff on the Curtis thing, on the recent Georgia commit, Jaden Wade, what that means in light of all of this. Obviously, a five-star for the class of 2028. We'll get into all of this with Jeff in a moment. Let me give you, though, a couple of thoughts before we get to that point in today's show. Listen, I don't think that Curtis is leaving Georgia's 2026 class. I truly don't. But at the same time, just given how weird a lot of stuff plays out with recruiting, I understand why a lot of Georgia fans are not going to be so sure about this until it's all said and done. And I do get the Georgia fan who looks at the recruiting reporter, be it our Jeff Sentell or some of the national guys or anything in between, and says, I really don't know what I expect you to tell me to make me think that something at the last minute couldn't happen. But for a lot of Georgia fans, they're just pretty skeptical of any recruiting news in this day and age because of how quickly stuff changes. And it goes beyond just, Dylan Raiola was committed to Georgia for a while, and then he moved to Georgia, and then he still ended up going to Nebraska. I was thinking about this. This is a transfer, not a high school guy. But do y'all remember, like, when Jaden Maeva, the now USC quarterback, was briefly committed to Georgia? I was just thinking about that out of the clear blue earlier this morning, that there's all kinds of stuff that goes on with these quarterback recruits and recruits in general in this NIL age. It seems like things can always change. So I'm trying to do two things here. I'm trying not to unnecessarily fan the flames of hysteria, because I believe a lot of this probably traces back to sources close to Vanderbilt would really love it if Clark Lee could get a contract extension. And anything they can put into the atmosphere that makes signing Clark Lee to a much longer, much more lucrative contract, and by the way, getting some of their boosters involved in the game when it comes to an NIL standpoint, anything that motivates that in Nashville, sources close to Vanderbilt probably view that as a pretty good thing. Ever skeptical as I am, that's what I assume this probably is. But I do understand the Georgia fans who are just not quite so sure. They are just going to be on guard for whatever. So, how on guard should you be? Well, I will pose all these questions to Jeff Sentell coming up in just a moment, and you can judge then for yourself about what really might be going on here. That plus more reaction to the 2028 five-star quarterback commit that Georgia got last weekend. All of that coming up with Jeff Sentell. Before that, though, let me shift to this. Tomorrow's obviously, in addition to some young fans going to their very first Georgia game, we always assume that sort of thing goes on. We hear from you that it is. It's also a pretty special day for some current Georgia players on both ends of the spectrum. Let's start with this. I am always going to be incredibly sentimental. That's just the way that I am. And so senior day always gets to me a little bit. I also do high school football, and we see lots of senior nights on Friday nights at the high school football season. And for many of those folks, they're playing their last football game ever. And so you can't help but be emotional about that. We're seeing some good video on our video broadcast right now of Kirby giving the hugs, that state rallies from a year ago. It's just an emotional time where these very large football players are forced to consider that many of them have been playing this game since they were a small child, and they have reached a real milestone. The college career they once dreamed of having is now at the final stages of coming to an end. Can you imagine how much emotion they feel? I feel emotion on their behalf about it. I think many of you who are in the stadium probably do too. And this week, Kirby Smart was able to talk about exactly what this senior class has meant to Georgia, both this season, as many have stepped into larger roles, and collectively over the course of their time here at UGA, as they have maintained an incredible standard for the Bulldogs. This is Kirby going back to Monday.
Probably, more about this year, because the majority of this senior class has had an increased role, at least from a leadership perspective, maybe a snap perspective in some guys' cases this year, because there were a lot of seniors last year. And this class has been unique in that this season's been different. They've been part of the new culture, first real senior class that was kind of brought into this group. A couple of them left last year, so Malachi and Michael, they were all part of this class that's gone. But when you look across the board, the fourth-year seniors, they were kind of the first. It was in its infancy, but they were in the NIL stage in phases. So, proud of them, love them like I do the others, and I want to continue for them to grow.
You ever see pictures from like Europe or somewhere like that, and there are these gigantic cathedrals? I'm always really amazed by these big, just beautiful buildings. And you study them a little bit, you find out that some of these, not all of them, but some of them were constructed over a period of hundreds of years. Now, consider what that means for a moment. That means that multiple generations of men took over the work that a previous generation had done and then worked their entire lives only to pass that same work off to another generation to continue the task that they didn't start themselves. They only participated in for a brief time over the span of many, many lifetimes. There's something about that that's really beautiful to me, that's really inspiring in many ways. And I think a football team works very much the same way. Oftentimes you'll hear coaches say, hey, it's important to commit yourself to a cause greater than yourself. And when coaches say that, they mean the team. Now, ask yourself this question literally for a moment. Why is a football team, this specific Georgia program, why is that cause greater than the individual? Some people wouldn't necessarily believe that it was. Why do those of us who love football think that way? Because it existed long before us, and it will continue to exist long after this. For those of us who are fans of the team or cover the team, for the players who play on the team, for the coaches who coach the team, all they really are brief caretakers of an entity that will exist way after we're gone, and it existed long before we were ever born. We're just stewards of this particular moment, but Georgia football itself, in some form or fashion, God willing, is going to continue to exist for many generations to come. And so when you watch the baton of senior class pass to the next group, who passed to the next group, who passed to the next group, I don't know. There's something about that I find to be, like I said, really inspiring. I think it's beautiful. And when you look at the overall accomplishments of these seniors, guys like Cash Jones and Micah Morris and Oscar Delp and all the others that you can mention here, think about just the 4 years of a traditional senior They are 48-5 in 4 years. If you think about those who are also here in 2021, about 62-6 over the course of that span. Obviously, as good as anybody's ever going to be. This is an incredibly successful group of seniors who have not just allowed Georgia to maintain success, have really transcended the program and put it on a completely different plane than it was. And by how they've gone about their business, demonstrating how the next group can also live into that and achieve a similar level of success through leadership, through the way in which they model with their performance. It is just a group worthy of being lauded. And tomorrow on Senior Day, that's going to be a great thing to get a chance to see. And on the far end of the spectrum, if Georgia, who's a 43.5 point favorite in the game, has the kind of performance that a lot of Georgia fans are hoping that it has, it's also a chance to see some young folks getting involved, maybe just a little bit too. Maybe quarterbacks like, Ryan Puglisi for sure. Kirby even mentioned Ryan Montgomery by name this week, too. Maybe you see multiple quarterbacks beyond just the backup quarterback play tomorrow. A lot of Georgia fans are hoping for beyond the freshmen we've gotten really used to seeing, the likes of Elijah Griffin or certainly the two offensive linemen, Dontrell Glover and Juan Gaston, guys that we've seen glimpses of, but maybe more of tomorrow. Elias Williams, C.J. Wiley, Zayden Walker as of late. He's been really coming on strong. Or young guys who we think have very bright futures at Georgia, who we haven't seen as much of yet. That's where an Isaiah Gibson might come to mind. There are others, of course. I don't have time to mention every single one, but you get the drill here. That on a day in which we start the day by celebrating seniors, we might also get a chance to appreciate at the end of the day the next generation, the youth of Georgia football, guys who use the experience they get in games like this to be one day themselves future top contributors and one day celebrated seniors when their time at UGA comes to an end. And of course, on a year like this, that seems even more poignant at Georgia because Georgia has been forced to, I mentioned the Glovers and the Gastons and the Griffins. Georgia's been forced to play so many young folks this season, guys either in their first or second year at Georgia that did not have as much experience as the previous player who would have been in their position in some, previous year. But Kirby Smart says that what Georgia's endured this year is going to be the norm for college football, Georgia included, moving forward, which, if what Smart says is true, means days like tomorrow where you hope for, you can't go in assuming this, certainly the team itself can't, but you hope these guys get that experience. Kirby Smart talked about more along the lines of how the youthful energy that Georgia's played with this year and the overcoming experience, or the lack of experience, I mean to say, that's what college football is going to be like moving forward. In light of the fact that Georgia hopes to get some playing time for some young folks tomorrow, let's hear Kirby Smart on that topic right now.
We're going to be young every year, so I don't think college football is going to have old teams anymore. I think they're going to be youth across the board, and we're going to have to. I'm going to have to get used to being patient because it's what it is. How fast can you grow your youth compared to others? But I'm proud of this group and what they've done. They've got good intangibles. They work hard. They'll get tested this week in terms of their focus and how well they can continue to elevate as opposed to just sit there and idle by. They got to make a choice on whether they want to continue to get better.
I think that's really interesting from Kirby. There's also kind of a funny moment when he says, if you're watching a video, maybe you noticed this, when he says, I've just got to learn how to be patient. And the look on his face, like many of us, certainly suggested that patience wasn't his favorite thing to try to cultivate within himself necessarily. I think that's pretty funny. But it also points to what tomorrow's going to be like. Guys that if they've had the right week of preparation, make it the chance to play tomorrow and make it the chance to show some growth compared to where they would have been against Marshall or Austin Peay. Tomorrow's a good day for a lot of these young players to demonstrate that they're not quite such freshmen anymore. They've been around this program for now almost a full season, and they are better now than they were before. So let me see if I can sum everything up this way. That tomorrow's going to be a different day for different fans, depending on where you fall on all of this. For a lot of families bringing young fans, they may not make it to the fourth quarter. We understand that. They may appreciate the senior day festivities. Some of those young fans may get a little restless. They may be out the door by the time we get late into the second half. However, there's some of you, if the game goes the way it's supposed to, you'll be paying more attention to the third and fourth quarter than you are at the beginning of the game. Because by now you've seen Georgia against, the top competition, and you've seen the players who've helped lead Georgia to those wins. You're curious with the next generation. Does Puglisi get in? Does Montgomery get in? Do we see more of C.J. Wiley? How about Zayden Walker or Isaiah Gibson or on and on and on? You can go, and a lot of you will have your roster out and you'll be checking off names as you see them, and you'll let your mind wander about what a future senior day might look like when these guys come to their full maturity as players. It is the final scheduled home game of the year for Georgia, and for different reasons, it can be a very fun day. And the most fun thing about it of all may be the fact that here in this 2025 season, beyond Saturday, there is still plenty more meaningful football on the way. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. Glad you are with us, however you get to us live on video. Final day for us, and at least on the home front, for a while. We may do some shows at home again at some point in the future, but we'll be back in the friendly confines of our DawgNation World Headquarters studio on Monday. I'm told that the network improvements we were looking to make, I guess they happen. I'll never know the difference because I don't 100% even know what a network is, but there's all kinds of fiber optic cables and things like that running over my head in the studio. It seems like those have maybe been improved upon, so we'll trust that that went the way that it was supposed to go. Here's what I can tell you. We're thankful to have our friends at Kroger making the show possible for you here today. And boy, next week is Thanksgiving, which means everybody's getting stocked up. Turkey on the table, the sides to go with it, all the stuff that makes Thanksgiving special, and the savings that are necessary to make it as enjoyable for you and your family as it needs to be. That's what Kroger wants to provide you right now. So you can obviously shop in store and take full advantage of that. But if you want to begin that shopping experience online, you can go to Kroger.com/Thanksgiving and learn more about everything that Kroger's got going on this time of year. It's a wonderful resource for me and my family every Thanksgiving, and it can be for you too. So check out Kroger.com/Thanksgiving for more on that today. Okay, let me remind you, as I told you before, we got Jeff Sentell coming up in a moment. Great conversation I recorded with Jeff yesterday, looking at the Curtis rumors, the Jaden commitment. Georgia got a running back commitment last weekend, 3 official visitors tomorrow. So a lot of recruiting talk coming up with Jeff Sentell here in just a little bit. Prior to that, let's go around the doghouse. Let's do something just for fun. It's presented today by Zagoria Law. And of course, we love the fact that, speaking of our dog bite injury lawyers, the dogs took a big old bite out of Texas last week, and you better believe we loved that. And we were just really proud of how Sanford Stadium was put on the big national stage. We predicted more than 10 million people would watch this on television. More than 10 million people actually did watch this game on television. So we'll take that as a big win. And we thought the crowd was incredibly impactful. I mean, just an awesome night to be in Sanford Stadium, and such a big flex on the part of DawgNation for how intimidating that atmosphere was and how overwhelmed we thought that Texas was by. And I tell you, it's really cool. The most famous Texas fan of all is Matthew McConaughey, the incredibly famous actor who's really a fixture around the Texas program. I joked on social media this past weekend about him always wearing the same outfit to every game, but nonetheless, he's always there. And McConaughey was on, I think it's Theo Vaughn's podcast this week, and the subject of being at Sanford Stadium came up. And listen, this is actually really cool. Matthew McConaughey, big Texas fan, the guy that, what is he, their chief ambassador of culture or whatever it is they, call him. He's a big part of Texas football, on the sidelines all the time. But he was incredibly complimentary of Georgia fans. I don't know how you feel about McConaughey. I think he's a pretty good actor. I actually kind of like him, although his off-camera persona sometimes is a little strange for me. But as an actor, I think he's pretty good. As a respecter of what Sanford Stadium is all about, I think you're going to really like this. I think it's Theo Vaughn, with Theo Vaughn, talking about Georgia fans, talking about Sanford Stadium. This is great from Matthew McConaughey.
We used to have Sanford Stadium down in Georgia. Got it handed to us.
You were down there at the UGA. What's that like over there at that Athens? I've never been between the hedges. It was?
I had never heard Sanford Stadium between the hedges as being like one of the places. Whoa, it's really hard. Oh, yeah, man. Was it 90,000? And those fans are in unison, man. And they had, I tell you what, I get to measure stadiums, right, when I go to them. Like, what's the fan base?
Oh,
like,
yeah, it's amazing.
How happy are they that I'm there compared to how much did they, like, F you, McConaughey, we're going to get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this crowd was loud from the beginning, especially that first half, and then the second half when they started to boat roll. They were still really that, but they were one of the higher decibels that I've heard. But they were continuous is the thing, especially anytime that they're that we were on offense. But because you get crowds that are in unison, they know the chants.
Auburn does a good job of that, being in unison.
Yeah,
they have their
it's
chants.
a big thing. You can have 30,000 more people, but if the rituals and the cheers aren't in unison, it's not as intimidating
at all.
And yeah, they were happy I was there, but they were also giving me straight horns down and going, "We're going to whip your tonight." And so it was a healthy hate they had.
I love that.
First of all, I think it's really cool how big of a college football fan Theo Vaughn is. Vaughn's become very famous as a podcaster, and he's a legitimate college football fan. Some of these people that hang around college football, not always that necessarily big a fan, but in case of Theo, he's a pretty big fan. And the McConaughey stuff is great. The actual things that he say are terrific in that it is probably true that you don't see Sanford Stadium getting the credit it deserves for what the atmosphere is. The win-loss record should speak for itself. Doesn't seem like that always does enough. But, I'm sorry, I've been just about everywhere. And on nights like what Georgia had against Texas, Georgia is as good as anywhere. It just really is. It's not the reputation. I think the reputation has also grown, but you can't really be better than what Georgia fans were this past Saturday. And obviously, within the last year, we've also seen the improvements, adding the pyrotechnics and some of the bells and whistles. They've had the wristbands this year with the LED lights on that, so that's all been really good. But ultimately, it's the crowd itself that makes the noise. And Theo, I should say, Matthew McConaughey is both, I think, correct in what he says, but also cool to point out, hey, by reputation, this is not one of the stadiums I've heard of, but my gosh, they were dominant on Saturday, and one of the big reasons why the Georgia team fed off that so well. I'll also say this: Georgia should use this. Kirby was mad about Auburn because Kirby had gotten asked about Auburn in SEC Media Days in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and Kirby, I think, is pretty intuitive about stuff like this, and so he mostly sidestepped the question, but they still ended up finding some way to slice it up and put it on the video board before the game, and he noticed that and made mention of it in his post-game press conference. But this is Matthew McConaughey. This is this is one of the more famous guys in America, going on for more than a minute, right, about all the stuff that he liked about Sanford Stadium. Honestly, I think that Georgia should make this a part of its pregame. A lot of stadiums do this. Williams-Brice does that with a lot of quotes from people about how tough it is to play in Williams-Brice Stadium, and I would say that it is. Mississippi State does this about coming into Davis-Wade and a lot of the stuff that's been said there. And it's kind of funny. Some of the people they quote aren't exactly the most famous people. I just think it's kind of funny that they're just grabbing whatever quote they can find. But nonetheless, they use that. But this is not some random internet guy. This is Matthew McConaughey talking about Sanford Stadium and talking about how loud it is and how in unison the crowd was. I think Georgia can use this. I think that Georgia can make this a part of its pregame ritual, slice it up, cut it up, and make it a part of what they do. I think that really, really matches. Obviously, you got to splice some more stuff with it, of course, but that's the backbone for a pretty good piece of video to run before Georgia games. I hope they'll do something with that. Now, as far as the crowd itself, one more thing before we change the subject. Kirby Smart also had his compliments for the Georgia crowd on Saturday, because what ultimately matters is, did they aid Georgia's effort in winning, and did they make it harder on Texas? Kirby Smart on Saturday said that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, what a great atmosphere for college football. I love it. Our fans were impactful in the game, and I thought the whole game management crew, it was our early atmosphere. Like, we got out there for warm-ups, and it was really good.
I think it's funny now that we're more aware of game management crews than we used to be. I'm talking about across the SEC. There is this understanding that, okay, the crowd's going to be loud, but what can you do to amplify that? I've said before, I think there's certain kinds of music you can play in prior to second, third, and fourth down that I think amplifies the crowd noise, pairs with it a little bit more. That's a game management decision. The pyrotechnics, the LED lights. There's a lot of things that go into a loud crowd to make the entire thing just seem more intense. And we're all just more aware of this than we used to be. I'm talking about not just at Georgia, but everywhere. When I go to opposing stadiums, I'm always paying attention to what their game management stuff does to make their environment intense. And in the SEC, they do it well, usually. and Georgia does that too. And listen, I say this a lot, and I'll say it again. You can laugh at my voice cracking there, but I say this a lot, and I'll say it again. For Kirby Smart to be as plugged into his own team as he is, and as into the serious football stuff as much as he is, it is really cool that he also pauses in moments like this to say, y'all were impactful. This wasn't just coaches. This wasn't just players. Y'all were impactful. You impacted this game too. After the Arkansas game in 2021, he said, I'll give the crowd 10 points for this game today. You know, Kirby does a good job of making DawgNation, the fan base around the program, feel a part of it, and that's a pretty cool thing to do. But more importantly, at least in this case, kind of nice to hear a very famous voice like Matthew McConaughey, who was just there, saying, boy, these Georgia fans were tough, and they made it hard on my favorite team. I really like that. That's kind of a cool thing, and we'll make that Around the Doghouse, presented today by Zagoria Law. Now, what I don't like are dog bites. Negligent owners that don't take proper care of their animal, it gets loose, it maybe knocks somebody over, especially like child, elderly person, or in just any situation, park, city street, neighborhood, whatever else, dog gets loose. I mean, that can be a really scary situation. And if you or someone you love has been bitten or injured by a dog, not yours, negligence on the part of the owner, we think you deserve your chance to fight for compensation on that, just like any other personal injury situation. And we would say that if that's the decision you're going to make, then of course you'd want to work with the folks who literally wrote the book on how to win cases like this, folks who are experts in this sort of thing. And that is what our friends at Zagoria Law are. So I want you to reach out to them today. 833-GA-DOG BITE. Dog spelled conventionally here, D-O-G. 833-GA-DOG BITE, or online, Zagoria, ZagoriaLaw.com. They literally wrote the book. I mean, literally, they wrote a book on how to win cases such as the one you might be dealing with. So if you have been bitten or injured by a dog, if negligence on the part of the owner has led to pain and suffering or medical bills, whatever for you, then treat it like any other personal injury situation and hire our friends at Zagoria Law to help get you through it. So one more time, 833-GA-DOG-BITE, or online, ZagoriaLaw.com. Okay, before we're done, it is supposed to be calm before the storm, sleepy weekend prior to rivalry week, and then championship Saturday after that. But oftentimes, this is where craziness happens in the SEC. Could there be some this week? And what about the big national game, too? We'll cover all of that before we're done. But now, Jared Curtis rumors, 2 Georgia commits, 3 official visitors this weekend, and a partridge in a pear tree. All of that coming up with Jeff Sentell here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Glad to have you with us for it.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, we're going to talk some with Jeff Sentell. Jeff, good enough to join us a little early. He's out of town on Friday today, so we recorded this on Thursday afternoon. It's actually a great time to have Jeff in the program because there's some recruiting news this week for Georgia that we really haven't had time to hit very much, just given everything else that has been going on. So, Jeff, always a pleasure to have you in the program, and perhaps important today just because of the fact that some of this recruiting news is starting to pile up here and it needs to be addressed in our program. So we appreciate you allowing us to do that with you here today.
Brandon, you remember what it was like way back when in 2001 and 2021, 2022, when there'd be like 5 or 6 names left on the board and Georgia would get commitments in November. It's a far cry from those days, but got 2 last weekend, potentially 4 or 5 more coming down the track over the next month. It feels like old times.
Yeah, it does. It's fun. So let's start with a couple of those. On Thursday's edition of DawgNation Daily, we did talk about Jaden Wade a bit, but I want to get more into this here right now. It's 2 cycles ahead, at least for now it is. I guess there's been some chatter that maybe Wade could reclassify, but it feels like a long time away for maybe the average Georgia fan, but it's always nice to start working on some of that quarterback depth. So tell me about Wade as the player, and tell me how a fan should process, just given how much things can change, how a fan should process a commitment that, at least for now, is so far into the future.
Yeah, I think people are fickle like that, Brandon. But the first thing is I want folks to understand how Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo go about it. Their job is to make their quarterback room feel like Santa's sleigh at the Rockefellers. And what I mean by that is quarterbacks spilling out left and right, the latest quarterback gizmo toy with the G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip, whatever you want to call it. but like their job is to stack up that sleigh with quarterbacks. Brendan, I don't know in my time covering this for Dog Nation if the past, present, or future is as good as it is right now. Number one quarterback in 2026, number one quarterback in 2028. Maybe he might reclassify to 2027. All the better for the Dog Nation. And like, listen, the Jared Curtis narrative is out there. I don't think he's going to flip. I think that is people just pumping some numbers for the end of the year. But the Georgia fan that chooses to worry about that should feel encouraged by the presence of Jaden Wade, because if there's no Jared Curtis, well, then there comes the number one quarterback in 2028 who could potentially reclassify to 2027. And that maybe is a better bridge between Gunnar Stockton, Ryan Puglisi, Ryan Montgomery, who we continue to hear great things about, to the next generation of Georgia quarterbacks. And I mean, Brandon, Jaden Wade is a guy that you'll love this, man. People are wondering, oh, it's a 2028. He's going to flip about 9 times or get big NIL. Jaden actually silently committed to Georgia before his season, his sophomore season. Now, he's an older sophomore prospect where it makes the reclassification a possibility, but he's been already committed to the Dogs since about August. So he's already showed some staying power already with his commitment. He's a very thinking man's quarterback. He can run about a 4.5, Brennan. He's very elusive, but he thinks of the game from the neck, from the head and shoulders down. High IQ, big arm, accurate arm, and then he has legs to get himself out of trouble when he needs to.
So I think that's all really good, and I'm really happy to have Wade as a part of a future Georgia class. I do, though, at least want to give voice to what some fans may say, which is, and you mentioned Jared Curtis, and trust me, we'll get there before this conversation is done in a couple of minutes. If you can't even 100% count on Curtis coming to Georgia a few months after his second time committing to UGA, then the thought of, well, you'll definitely hold on to Wade for 2 years, for a lot of Georgia fans, that's a pretty long bridge to try to cross. And I don't, fault them for necessarily feeling that way. I'm not necessarily looking to say, you shouldn't care about this. He's not going to come. I'm just saying I do understand the Georgia fan that says, wow, 2 years away is a long time, when a few months worth of holding on to Jared Curtis is also turning out to feel like a long time.
Yeah, but I think some of that is like industry inflated with Curtis. And what I mean by that is like, I don't know how many people know this, but somebody's asked me in the past on Before the Hedges, like, how do all these recruits have all this gear, this Georgia gear? Some of them got the old school standing bulldog. Some of them got like the faux kind of like rope die cast metal chain. And people don't know this. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there's like a prize closet, so to speak, or it probably looks like your closet, BA, of Georgia gear where they can go through and pick out what they want. Well, the Curtis family, his young nephew, he was wearing a Georgia jumper, and that's something that the family has put together. Now, to the point when you're outfitting your, infant nephew with Georgia gear, jumpers, onesies, stuffed animals. I don't know what that seems in terms of real life, but in terms of, recruiting life versus real life, because you got follow the visits, or he won't shut things down totally or whatever. I think when your nephews are in Georgia gear already, I think that says something about the strength of the commitment. And I don't buy the he wants to play right away. Brandon, when he initially recommitted to Georgia back in May, he knew Gunnar had another year. He knew Gunnar wasn't going anywhere. And Vanderbilt's not going to put together this war chest of money that's going to make Jared Curtis flip. If he does, it's just going to be for the fact that he can be the man and play right away at Vanderbilt as the starter. To kind of combine a couple thoughts here, Brandon, I think between Jared Curtis, 5-star number one quarterback in 2026, and Jaden Wade, 5-star number one quarterback in 2028 or 2027, put an asterisk next to that, I think Georgia would probably feel confident that it's going to get a 5-star quarterback in the future at some point between those two, because whatever happens with Curtis, if the miracle on ice 1980 of the recruiting world happens and he flips to Vanderbilt in an unprecedented story, well, then that will make things a lot more enthusiastic for Jaden Wade to gleefully become a Georgia Bulldog.
So since you bring up Curtis, I do want to talk about that, and we'll move that up and get to it in a second. Let me do one more thing on Wade before we get there, though. When there was initial chatter that Wade might reclassify, I assumed, and perhaps wrongly, that this was other programs looking to get him in the fold and get him into college quicker and all the things that can come your way by enrolling sooner. Does Georgia want him as a 2028 or do they want him as a 2027?
I think Georgia wants him, period. However, they can take him, Brandon. There's also the factor of like what's going to be like the first year for Curtis in Athens. It's just funny, Brandon. These things, when you try to speak big picture about these two topics and these two quarterbacks, they're linked in a lot of areas. Wade, remember, Brandon, he was just a first year starter here at IMG Academy this past season. So the thought was maybe he might need 2 or 3 years of high school football to get ready for the next level. Of course, he plays at IMG Academy, which plays that national elite schedule. I think Georgia, and again, Brandon, let's not kid ourselves here with rosy outlooks all the time. When Jared Curtis signs with Georgia on December the 4th, December the 3rd is National Signing Day, but I believe he'll be playing, December 4th is National Signing Day. But if Nashville Christian season holds its current course, they will actually be playing in the Tennessee TSSAA state championship game that day on signing day. So that'll be an interesting story regardless. But, even if he signs with Georgia, that first year is going to be interesting because I don't expect a player like Curtis to sit and wait multiple years. So, hey, after that first season, if it doesn't look like he's the guy, and maybe it's Puglisi or maybe it's Montgomery, what have you, after Gunner comes back for another season, then all of a sudden things become very interesting about Jared Curtis and his future at Georgia. It might be a year-to-year thing in terms of it's not time for him to start and he's not ready to take over the job, then perhaps portal things might happen there as well. And that's why you kind of need to always have a 5-star, I guess, in reserve in terms of Jaden Wade, where that would be more interesting. And it would kind of be really good risk management insurance for Georgia, always trying to make sure this quarterback room is as talented and as loaded as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always just seemingly a 50-50 proposition with all these guys. 50-50 of will they, won't they, 50-50 of how it's going to work out if they do. And it all just seems like something of a coin flip. But somehow Georgia always seems to have pretty effective quarterback play in the midst of all of this. So since you brought up Jared Curtis, I'll go there, and then we'll get back to the other commit here coming up in a moment. But there was additional reporting this week about, hey, maybe Jared Curtis might, consider, the Vanderbilt opportunity. Maybe he might view that as a real thing. And I guess the assumption that I've made, and once again, perhaps wrongly, is, man, it seems like the Vanderbilt staff would really love to have a contract extension for Clark Lee. And that's always somehow buried in this. Well, gosh, Jared Curtis might really go to Vanderbilt if Clark Lee gets a contract extension. I have a tendency to reverse engineer stories like this sometimes. And, okay, well, that must be what this is all about. And so therefore, some folks close to Clark Lee, or maybe Clark Lee himself, would really like to have a contract extension. Maybe that's not correct here, but the reporting as it has existed is not enough to make me think that Curtis is not coming to Georgia. Now, listen, all of this is, as I mentioned a moment ago, kind of a coin toss. Who really knows? But I guess I have not taken this all that seriously yet to begin with. Should I? Because clearly, if you look online, there are plenty of Georgia fans who are.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's always like Charlie Brown in the football, Brandon, with like the ball being pulled away at the last minute. Here's where it's different than Dylan Raiola in my mind. Number one, there's not this connection that's been built over years. Even when you talk to agents in that thing, Brandon, Jared wants to be a professional quarterback. He wants to be an NFL first-round draft pick. Well, Mike Bobo's done that with Matt Stafford. Brandon Streeter, who's also on Georgia's staff as a QB analyst, has done that with Trevor Lawrence. How many people have done that in terms of the Vanderbilt program with taking a 5-star and guiding them to the first round of the NFL draft? That number is 0. And so that's one of the things that's focused on. Brendan, as of early last week, Vanderbilt hadn't even construed an offer towards Jared Curtis and his representation. And it's funny, we said that on Hedges a while back, Brandon, and it's kind of funny how the world works, because I was like, everybody on social media was like, well, Jared Curtis doesn't even have an offer from Vanderbilt yet. And they misconstrued that to think that was a scholarship offer. Right. Brandon, scholarship offer not going to matter here at all. It's the NIL offer on the table. Vanderbilt is a team that is going to turn over buku seniors Will they be able to pay a lot of portal guys to come in and replicate that success along with Jared Curtis? I don't think so. Like, who's going to protect him? Like Juan Gaston, Dontrell Glover, Ekene Boko, and the like. Who's going to get him the ball back? Who's he going to throw the ball to in terms of weapons? If we want to conjure up things and, everybody's going to be nervous about something and bite their fingernails about something, I'd like to go a zig in the opposite direction, Brandon. Can you imagine Jared Curtis one day throwing the football to CJ Wiley as a junior,
Sure.
Talon Taylor as a junior, Ethan Barbour as a junior, Elias Williams as a junior? Can you imagine what that Georgia offense might look like?
No, I think that's a lot of fun to consider, and hopefully Georgia fans will one day get a chance to see that. Let me just say two more things on this. And once again, I want to be fair to Georgia fans what they would say, because this idea of, oh, this is not going to be like Dylan Raiola that some would point out. But before Dylan Raiola flipped to Nebraska, the prevailing narrative would have been, do you think a guy that moved to Georgia for his senior year is going to go to Nebraska? Suddenly after it happens, it becomes, well, there was always going to be the big pull to go play for his father's alma mater. But that's not what people were saying prior to it happening, I mean to say. Now, in the case of Jared Curtis, as I've told you, I don't believe he's going to go to Vanderbilt. But it's going to be the same thing if he does of, oh, the chance to play for his hometown school was just too much, hard to turn down a chance to play for your hometown team. I mean, it's the same thing, just said differently. The Nebraska thing, the family pull there was just too much. With Jared Curtis, it can change on a dime of suddenly the hometown opportunity was just too much to pass up on. So Georgia fans are not crazy for noticing that things have a tendency to change quickly, and when it does, the story completely flips itself from where it was before. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I don't fault Georgia fans for noticing things.
Brandon, kind of once bitten, twice shy, I guess, a little bit with that. But first of all, I love it when you start breaking out into character voices on your show. But there's a measure of loyalty there with the Curtis camp that I think exists that didn't exist with Dylan Raiola. How many high schools had he been to? 4 or 5, searching for the right opportunity. Jared has always stated his hometown Nashville Christian, even when opportunities to go play elsewhere, perhaps at like an ING Academy or Brentwood Academy or any of those powerful private schools in the state of Tennessee would have afforded him. I think that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider there is, Raiola was such a unique thing. I'm going to stand on the table about this. I think the number one thing that happened with Dylan Raiola in Georgia wasn't uncle is the offensive lineman, dad is the All-American center that went on to the NFL and is a Cornhuskers legend. The uncle is the offensive line coach. I think it was a matter of Carson Beck coming back for the 2024 season that really finally scared away Raiola. He wanted to play right away. He wanted the reps. He wanted the keys to the offense, and that wasn't going to happen with Carson coming back, because everybody thought with Carson throwing to Brock and Carson throwing to Ladd and that 2023 team that everything would be rosy. Georgia would win out again, and Carson would play great in the playoffs, and that would propel a big draft push for him to go in the first or second round after that 2023 season. That never happened, and things kind of changed a little bit there with that narrative. I think it's that more than anything, trying to play right away. But the other thing about Jared is he's already decommitted once, and he looked around. He saw everywhere he could go to, and then he went back to Georgia. Brandon, I don't even know if the family had visited Vanderbilt more than 2 times in his recruitment prior to the 2 times he visited the week of the Missouri game for Vanderbilt when game day came there and everything else. So, I mean, and I know
once
people
again,
talk.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, but once again, what fans would say is different position. But Justice Terry hardly ever visited Texas either, and was dressed in red and black the day that he chose Texas. That any story that we would tell ourselves, there is a counter story that would tell a completely different tale. And as I said before, I don't think that fans are necessarily dumb for noticing that kind of thing.
I think it's talking season, Brandon. It's what recruiting used to be like, with about 10 prospects at this time of year. I just think Justice Terry was motivated by money. I don't think Jared Curtis is motivated by money at all. Jared Curtis is motivated by the fact that he wants to go first round in the NFL draft in 3 or 4 years. Justice Terry wanted immediate kind of cash right away. And if he wanted more money, Brandon, he would be committed to Oregon right now or committed to South Carolina, because those schools also offered Jared a lot more. I also think this, and this is another one of those things when you're having this discussion, and hey, we're just having a discussion among friends, but I think Jared Curtis wants to go to a place where he doesn't have to be Superman every game. Nothing against his teammates at Nashville Christian, because they're probably going to win 2 state championships. But for Jared, for Nashville Christian to win a lot of their big games over the last 2 or 3 years, Jared's had to put up something like 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game. Brandon, he ran for 2 last week. He threw for 2 last week, and he caught a touchdown pass, the first catch of his career, as basically a tight end on an 8-yard pass play where he twisted his body in the end zone. I think he wants to get to the point where he can just be a guy some games, and then his team can still win. And this is the one thing I'll come back to. How should Georgia fans feel about Curtis? It is not, in my opinion, the chase to get Jared Curtis for him to help Georgia and propel Georgia. Brandon, Georgia's going to be fine. They'll find another Gunnar Stockton. They'll find another John Doe. They'll find another Puglisi or Montgomery, and they'll play great football, and they'll be a top 5 team in the country. It is just the lure of seeing Georgia with the most talented quarterback in the country. You know, that's a sequel to the Kirby Smart movie Glory Golden Era run that we haven't seen before, where Georgia has the best player in the country on its offense playing quarterback. And that's the potential there with Georgia and Jared Curtis.
Let me also say this just real quick. You know, you reported the other day that, hey, there's no NIL offer for Curtis by Vanderbilt yet. The other thing that I think is interesting about this story for how college football works right now is that some of what programs are doing is obviously trying to recruit players with the NIL dollars they have. And this story, I think, how public it's been with, you know, if we can just get the long-term contract and if we can just get the big NIL offer in writing, we have a chance to get Jared Curtis. I think it also shows the other thing that coaches do these days, especially when it comes to smaller schools and maybe the quarterback position in particular, it's the recruiting of the big booster to come out of the woodworks and say, we can play the big boy game at the quarterback position if you're willing to pony up. And when I read a lot of these stories, like Vanderbilt courting Jared Curtis, to me, the whiff of, if you guys will just pony up some dollars, we got a chance to win this thing. It's program recruiting boosters as much as it is program recruiting player. And I think this goes on a lot more places than just Vanderbilt.
I think it's going on a lot of places right now, Brandon. Most would not know that Duke's quarterback makes upwards of $3 to $4 million per year. And look what that's brought them. And then I think Memphis is another example where they're paying their quarterback. They've traditionally paid their quarterback top dollar compared to anywhere else in the country, simply because they feel that that quarterback is the equalizer or perhaps the difference to get them above their conference opponents and into the playoffs. And you know, this is one of those things with Jared where there's a really comfort level there with Coach Streeter and Coach Bobo and Coach Smart. Like, one of the things he's looking for really is stability. And I tell you what, I think wherever which way this one goes, Brandon, Jared Curtis, if he's in Vanderbilt, Brandon, I'm going to imagine that season as him while they try to get people around him, is that's going to be a tough sledding for a freshman quarterback in the SEC with the Vanderbilt roster. But, you know, again, Brandon, this is one of these 5-star quarterbacks with lots of moxie, lots of swagger, lots of charisma. They feel like they can give him 10 other guys in the huddle, and if they're good college football players, they can make it work in any scenario. That's how confident they are in their abilities.
So I want to move on to another commitment that Georgia got this weekend. Noah Parker, running back in the class of 2027. A lot to like about him, where he's from, Macon County. That's obviously a place where good football gets played. Also, the fact that in the story you have with him at DawgNation.com, he talks about wanting to play with Andrew Beard, a running back that a lot of us have got to know because of his family tie to Derek Nurse and because of any number of other things, including the fact that Prince Avenue has just been a high-profile program. Parker says he wants to play with Andrew Beard, which I loved in your story at DawgNation.com. But tell me what else Georgia's getting in Parker.
This is a guy that kind of wanted to be a dog, Brandon, and I think that's one of the things that Kirby Smart chiefly looks for now is people that he don't have to money whip, to use a famous Brandon Adam term, or just coerce guys that wanted to be there. Like, he told me after the Kentucky game, like, I mean, Brandon, he was looking down on the field for the Kentucky game like I don't know, draw your own metaphor. Like he had the GI Joe aircraft carrier, or the Optimus Prime, man, when we were growing up, or maybe he was the Red Ryder BB gun for generations gone by. But he looked like he was in love. It was kind of one of those things where I was like, man, this guy might commit right now. I talked to him afterward, and he said, I'm going to go commit to Kirby Smart for the Texas game. I can't wait. He's like, he told me a great story about how he couldn't wait to go into Kirby Smart's office. He was a little nervous, and he was telling Kirby, he says, I'm narrowing it down. And he's like, well, we're with you no matter what. And he's like, Coach, it's already narrowed down. You're the one. I'm home, man. And it was one of those guys where it's not going to take a lot of NIL to get Noah Parker. He's about 5'9". He's 207 pounds, and he's going to kind of look like that Bo Walker type back that Georgia's, signed in the last class. But Brandon, tailback's a position where Georgia can kind of never have too many. They've gone one signee in the 2025 class, one signee in the 2026 class at running back. I think this 2027 class, they're going to try and take 3, and Noah Parker's number 1, and he's already actively courting Andrew Beard, a Prince Avenue Christian. And, those two guys have already hit it off. And he said, maybe we will play together, man, because he really likes Georgia a lot. And to hear Noah Parker kind of manifesting that they're going to be the next iconic duo at Georgia, kind of like Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. He used those names. I mean, you like to see young people shooting for the stars with stuff like that.
Really fun stuff. Jeff, thanks so much for talking some recruiting with us here today. Obviously a busy weekend for Georgia this past weekend. A lot of fruits being born out of that win for Georgia against Texas. And, of course, we're heading towards signing day in the midst of everything else going on. It's going to be here before you know it. So we'll cover all of that with you then. Thanks for being here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger.
Brandon, such a busy time. There's 3 official visitors, Tyreek Jemison, Blake Stewart, who's came out of nowhere out of Woodward Academy. I know how well he plays. And then they've also got Elijah Littlejohn, the Penn State commitment. Brandon, we get to the last home game of the year, and then we finally have the 3 official visitors, only having one the entire season so far. So the next 2 weeks, Brandon, 2 weeks away from signing day, going to be very interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. A chance to host some official visitors, including Stewart, who we've talked about plenty, and Littlejohn, a guy that's gotten some attention after the departure of James Franklin, the firing of him. And, of course, Jemison's a guy that's been on radars for a while, too. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thanks for being here, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Enjoy the weekend. A little bit of time off for you, and we will look forward to talking to you here again very soon.
Take it easy, BA.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Great stuff from Jeff Sentell. Very thorough. Didn't quite mean to keep him on as long as I did, but we got into a lot of the recent Georgia commits, what might or might not be going on with Jared Curtis, and 3 official visitors this weekend. We should not lose sight of that. And listen, early signing period is even earlier this year than it's been before, right at the beginning of December. So we are not very far away from that at all. We've also got an SEC through coming up. We'll look at the big games of this weekend. Before that, though, can I give a quick shout out to our friends at Retro Roofers? And had a great conversation with the folks from Retro Roofers yesterday. And I really like what they're doing for our audience, because one of the things that comes up when you discuss the concept of a roof is that for a lot of people, this is one of the most anxious things about home ownership. Or if you're buying a home for the first time, if you're looking to sell a home for the person that's going to be buying yours, what is the condition of the roof? At some point in time, you know that your roof is going to need to be replaced. And who do you trust to help get that done? Well, that's what Retro Roofers wants to do for you. And I can tell you here on DawgNation, I've been looking forward to having a great roofing company to recommend to our audience. And I'm very, very satisfied with Retro Roofers as that company for us. If for no other reason among many, that they are a part of the GAF President's Club. Now, you got to understand something. Of the 3,000 companies that use the GAF shingles, only about 19 of those are going to make the President's Club. So in other words, they've been recognized by one of the largest shingle manufacturers as one of the best providers of new roofs and replaced roofs for folks here in the state of Georgia and in our area. That's the level of trust you're going to be able to have with this. You're also going to have on your job a contractor that's just as invested in a satisfactory outcome for you as you are for yourself. They're overseeing the entire process. In other words, really involved with you every step of the way. This isn't one of those faceless companies that who knows who's doing the work and who knows how it's getting done. No, you're going to have a point of contact person that's leading you through this every single step of the way. I'll be honest with you. If you're a homeowner, you know what it feels like, sounds like to have that knock on the door, somebody's going through your neighborhood door to door saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, who knows if you can trust that person? And when it comes to your home, the roof of your home, I mean, is that person knocking on the door? Are they insured? Are they, I mean, all kinds of questions come up related to this. But with our friends at Retro Roofers, you don't have to worry about any of that. They're going to serve you well. They're going to take good care of you. They also partner with 25 insurance companies, so they are deeply invested in this space. They know how to give you a quality roof replacement, and then they know how to provide you the peace of mind that you can enjoy for many years to come, knowing that you've got the best possible materials installed by the best available folks, putting a great roof together for you. So I want to check out more when it comes to Retro Roofers online, retroroofers.com, retroroofers.com. You can check it out today. You can also go look at the Retro Roofers YouTube page too. They get a lot of videos up where they educate you on the value of the architectural shingles and all of the materials they use and why it's better for you overall. It's just a good way to get educated about the roofing process. You can check out Retro Roofers on YouTube, but you can also just go to retroroofers.com for more on that today. All right. Let's get ready to look at some of the other games this weekend as it relates to the SEC. Big game across the league. The ranked matchup is Missouri going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a pretty big favorite in this one after obviously getting the big win against Alabama. We would say be a little bit careful, though, here when it comes to, what this game might be. When you look at Oklahoma, favored by more than a touchdown, 7.5 points, we think there's a chance that Missouri can keep it closer than that. In fact, it's our pick that they will. Oklahoma, you remember a year ago, got the big win against Alabama in Norman, but that's really running counter to what has happened for Oklahoma in its conference games since joining the SEC. They've lost outright in league play 3 times at home. I don't expect Missouri to beat them on Saturday, but I do think for a Missouri team that's proven to be pretty close. There's also the weird status of will Bo Pribble, the quarterback, play or not. He started off as doubtful, been raised to now questionable. Even if he does play, my assumption is not 100%. I don't know that Bo's a huge factor in this game, but for a Missouri team that's been pretty good defensively, for a Missouri team that's, found a way to win games, been one of the SEC's pleasant surprises this year, I like Missouri keeping it inside the number on Saturday. I also like Arkansas to do the same thing at Texas. Texas is 8.5-point favorite, and just first blush, it seems like Texas is a far better team. Arkansas has, after all, lost 8 in a row. Well, first of all, Texas is a far better team. But when you look a little deeper at Arkansas, here's what you see. In an 8-game losing streak, there was one game in that span that was a total blowout. They got absolutely annihilated by Notre Dame. Now, you can't completely disregard it, but just go with me for a second. If you throw the game against Notre Dame out and look at the other 7 losses for Arkansas, those losses are only happening at an average of about less than 4 points per game. You think about games against ranked opponents like Tennessee, at Tennessee, against Ole Miss, and against Texas A&M. All these are games in which Arkansas is losing. They've lost 8 straight, but they are losing narrowly. For a Texas team that saw itself drop 10 spots in the college football playoff rankings, or I should say 7 spots in the college football playoff rankings after its loss to Georgia, I think the message has gone out. Texas can't make the playoff. I think that questions the motivation factor for the Longhorns here. On the flip side, Arkansas hates Texas. This is what they consider one of their bigger rivals. They're always motivated to play this game, and they are playing close here right now. Once again, it's a situation where I don't expect the Hogs to win, but in DKR on Saturday, I think this one could be close. I'll take Arkansas plus the points. I also like Kentucky plus the points at Vanderbilt. We just did a whole thing with Jeff Sentell. By the way, the number there is 9.5. We just did a whole thing with Jeff Sentell about, Vanderbilt would love nothing more than for Clark Lee to get a coaching contract extension. And if he gets one, maybe they can get Jared Curtis too. In life, there may be unbiased reporters, but there are no unbiased sources. It's a very important thing to remember. If someone's talking to a reporter, they're talking for a reason. And you can usually reverse engineer what the source is saying for what the source's reason was speaking to a reporter who actually was. In this particular case, when it comes to these Jared Curtis stories, either Lee himself or folks close to Lee, I surmise, would really like to get that contract extension because maybe they don't feel like either they want to take one of these other jobs or they're going to get one of these other jobs outside of Vanderbilt. Clark Lee is a Vanderbilt grad. I'm sure he would love to stay there if he can get the commitment from Vanderbilt. Getting that's proven to be difficult. So if you can fan the flames with maybe 5-star quarterback's going to come here or maybe something like that, that's perhaps what you want to do. If Vanderbilt, the point of all of this is, really believed it was going to make the college football playoff, was going to win its final 2 regular season games and be 10-2, well, maybe they wouldn't need recruiting rumors to dangle to get a contract extension. Maybe they could just get it anyway. I think privately, maybe Vanderbilt knows that the clock is getting pretty close to striking midnight, whether it be at home against Kentucky, who did just blow out Florida 2 weeks ago, or certainly the regular season finale at Tennessee. I don't expect, once again, for the third time I'll say this, the Wildcats to beat Vanderbilt, but this was a close game a year ago in Lexington. It was just 20-13. This is a Kentucky defense that will probably be motivated to face Diego Pavia. And while Vanderbilt's done some pretty good things, this is a Kentucky team that, maybe much to my surprise, hasn't exactly given up on the season. I like Kentucky plus the points. I am, however, on the side of the favorite when it comes to Tennessee against Florida. And I know the track record here. You're talking about, 7 of the last 8 in which Florida's covered the spread against Tennessee, only failed to cover in 5 of the last 20. For a couple of decades here, it's been total domination, or at least, complete control of this rivalry for Florida over Tennessee. And if the number we've worked with on Saturday is just 3.5, listen, I also question Tennessee's motivation a bit too. I think this, as I told you yesterday, this game means more to the Tennessee coaching staff than it might mean to the Tennessee players. I totally understand that. But it's still a pretty small number for a Florida program that's still a pretty big mess. And so while they have had control against Tennessee in recent years, my guess is surely Tennessee figures out tomorrow. If anything, I would guess that Florida far more motivated for its regular season finale and its season finale against Florida State, the in-state rival, than it might be for Tennessee. I think that Tennessee, only a 3.5-point favorite against Florida, might represent a bit of a bargain. So I'll take the Gators there on that. And if you want our official pick, myself, the entire DawgNation team, plus Dari Payro from RS Andrews, on the big game outside the SEC, playoff implications as USC travels to Oregon. We'll give you that on the conclusion of Friday's video broadcast for what we call our RS Andrews cool down. But for now, we'll make that your SEC see-through. And before we get ready to wrap up here today, I want to give you a couple of broadcasting notes for tomorrow and shout out a couple of our great partners who make all that possible. First of all, Kaylee Manziel, see you tomorrow morning for our DawgNation Game Day pregame show. That'll be live on the DawgNation video channels, or if you want to see Kaylee in person, you can stop by the Jittery Joe's right there in downtown Athens. Great place to be for that show. And Jittery Joe's also a great company to keep in mind when it comes to that coffee pick-me-up fix you got to have. They've got the Attack the Day coffee cups in the K-Cup form now available wherever you're doing your shopping. You can find those. It's a great way to celebrate your UGA fandom while also enjoying the delicious Jittery Joe's coffee that's been voted Athens' best for more than 30 years. Long time track record of delicious coffee. They've been voted Athens' best for 15 years in a row. They are beloved in the community for more than 30 years. And by the way, if you'd love a great turnkey business that you can take your own financial dreams to the next level, maybe it might be time to talk about partnering with Jittery Joe's on a franchise opportunity. Listen, the coffee space is a crowded space, but when you have the brand recognition that Jittery Joe's has behind you, it's going to be a great business opportunity for you, and maybe far better than any other food-related, beverage-related franchise opportunity you might be thinking about. We think there's great value here when it comes to Jittery Joe's, and a great way to get in on what is essentially the ground floor of what's obviously a growing company and a beloved institution in Athens now for a very long time. You can go to jitteryjoes.com, Jittery, Joe's, obviously Joes, jitteryjoes.com to find out more about that. And don't forget, when it comes to the delicious taste of Jittery Joe's, when you download the Jittery Joe's app, your first beverage can be half off after that. So that's an awesome thing. Okay. Also, after the game tomorrow, for the final time, at least in the regular season, we'll be coming to you live from the UGA bookstore. That's for a very long time been our home away from home for our DawgNation post-game call-in show. It's also a great spot to be all weekend long when it comes to the regular season finale for Georgia. There's a bunch going on here right now, including alumni night tonight. That's from 4 to 7 p.m. About Mr. and Mrs. Claus going to be there. Harry Dog's going to be there. The great mascot Boom going to be there. And all kinds of authors and athletes on hand there as well. It's sweet treats, drinks. You can get exclusive deals on terrific brands like On Reserve. And, of course, Seasons jewelry for that special lady in your life. You can get some of that, too. And then on Saturday from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m. How about Rodney Hampton going to be there? Buck Ballou going to be there, and some great other UGA athletes on hand there as well. And I'll tell you this, we started the show by talking about how for a lot of Georgia fans, tomorrow's their first day to go to a young Georgia fans for their first game. When you want to go back to me as a young Georgia fan, remembering going to Georgia games for the very first time, one of the star players for Georgia at that time would have been Rodney Hampton, the great former Georgia running back. So it's pretty apropos that he'll be signing autographs along with Buck Ballou tomorrow from 10 a.m. till noon, leading into kickoff of Georgia against Charlotte. That's at the UGA Bookstore. And of course, you can find out more online, ugabookstore.com. It's where dogs shop. Then I'll see you tomorrow for the final time, at least in the regular season, the UGA Bookstore, and maybe for the final time this year, for our Dog Nation post-game call-in show. Hope you'll check that out tomorrow. And as we wrap up, we'll also get ready to give you a golden shoe here today as well. And as we do that, I'll remind you that tomorrow the game against Charlotte, but it'll be a quick turnaround to get ready for the final game after that. So in addition to getting ready for the Niners and all the stuff that's going to be, also got to get your focus ready for what's going to happen this time next week. It'll be game day for Georgia against Georgia Tech. So for a golden shoe to help us do just that today, let's show you the famous image of the great former Georgia defensive coordinator, Urkel Russell, with the very special message for Tech on the back of his coaching shirt, going back to a Georgia practice from a long time ago. That's an image that Georgia fans are very well aware of. Clean old-fashioned hate is a rivalry that means a lot to these UGA fans, and you better believe the moment that Charlotte game ends tomorrow, the focus will be on Georgia Tech, no matter what may happen for Georgia in terms of an SEC championship or perhaps a college football playoff. The next step on the way to any of that will be the in-state rivalry against Georgia Tech and taking over Mercedes-Benz Stadium, letting all those Jackets know that we run this state, always have, always will. That ain't gonna change. So good message from Coach Russell, the all-time great, who should, by the way, be in the College Football Hall of Fame. We'll make that our golden shoe today. Lousy, stinking Gators. How about for you? Speaking of Georgia rivals, we'll take a little time to make fun of you because it has been 1,840 days since Florida's beaten Georgia. That is our Gator Hater Updater. See you in Athens tomorrow. Enjoy the game against Charlotte. I'll see you tonight as well. High school football as Grayson gets ready to take on Georgia commit Jay Lamar in Colquitt County. Fun one at 8 p.m. tonight on Atlanta News First. We'll see you there for that. And of course, back here Monday, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Have a great weekend, everybody. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price is promised. That you can trust them to do all that for you here today. Love our friends at R.S. Andrews. Got a great meeting, a little lunch coming up at Dari Payro on Monday in celebration of Thanksgiving week. Can't wait to break bread with him. That is going to be a lot of fun. And of course, speaking of Dari Payro and our entire Dog Nation team, before I say hello to you in the chat, I mentioned a moment ago, the big national game this week involves USC and Oregon with playoff implications. Well, that's the final pick that we make with our team from Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. So it counts for our season-long standings. Let's let you see what our picks were for on that. We'll also give you some best bets here, too. The team from Go With The Flow, plus Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. Let's give you some thoughts on Oregon, USC, and some best bets as we head towards the weekend as a part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Hello, R.S. Andrews Cool Down viewers. Welcome into this taste of what you get when you watch Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. We drop it on Wednesdays on the Dog Nation video channels, and that's been well received. People like getting that show a little earlier. It gives them a chance to, I don't know if they're fading us or tailing us, but either way, it gives them a chance to use our picks to make their own picks. People seem to have fun with that. And so if you want to hear our thoughts on Georgia against Charlotte, gigantic number there, and some really good battles in the SEC, the place to see all of that is in the Dog Nation video channels right now, including Dog Nation on YouTube, for Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. But we always save a special one just for this portion of our weekly broadcast schedule. And this is the biggest game this week outside the SEC. It's the game for ESPN College Game Day in Eugene, Oregon, as the Oregon Ducks get ready to play host to the USC Trojans. Big number here. Oregon favored by 9.5 points after USC went through a battle against Iowa last week, finally emerging as a victor. and Oregon got its win too. Ducks favored by 9.5. Former Pac-12 rivalry. Playoff implications here in the Big Ten, though. Mike Griffith, we come to you. What do you want to do with the Ducks favored by 9.5?
Yeah, well, there's no puns here. This is going to be some smash mouth football on the Dan Lanning side of things. I like Oregon to win this game and cover. I think playing USC playing at Iowa's a physical football team. They take a little bit out of you. It's going to be a different game. And Autzen Stadium, I've been there. It's loud. It's deafening. You wouldn't think a stadium that small could be that loud, but it is. You add in the game day hype, and I feel like Oregon's built for the moment. They're going to lock down that playoff spot. They're going to rout USC and cover the spread.
How about that? Jeff Sentell, what about you?
Eye-opening to hear the word route. Here's case exhibit A number 1, that the Big 10 or the Big 19 or whatever it is now is way too big. These two teams only have 2 common opponents in both of those. Similar margins, especially the benchmark of the Iowa game. I think that's too many points. I like the magic of Outson. I like the magic of Beaverton. I like them to win the game, but that's too many points for me. I like USC to cover. Give me that 9.5, and I'll scurry to the money window.
There you go. Little split decision there. Connor Raleigh, how about for you?
Fight on. Give me the USC Trojans here. This is just too many points for an Oregon team that when they've played better competition this year, it just has not been the team that their ranking currently reflects. And I think the loser of this game is out of the playoff. And so I think that incentivizes a USC team, sort of been lingering here for a few weeks, to make a jump up into the playoffs. So give me the Trojans here on the road, plus 9.5.
Kaylee, what are you thinking?
The line at this much, because USC is not the most complete team, but they do have a good offense, and I'm just not exactly sure if Oregon is in that elite category with the rest of the people at the top of the college football playoff rankings. I like Oregon to win, but that's too many points, so I'm going to take USC.
I'm also going to take USC in this spot too. It's an interesting battle between what do you like better, battle tested or game control. Game control is the stat that we sometimes think about when it comes to college ball playoff selection committee. Oregon's had plenty of that with the, with rare exceptions. They've been winning their games in margin, but not exactly the most impressive wins. On the flip side of that, we've seen USC tussle with a few pretty good football teams and emerge victorious while doing so. Last Saturday against Iowa, that game, fair to point out, closer than experts pegged it to be, and myself included, but it was still a USC win. Earlier this season against Michigan, for instance, too. That USC has found a way to win with some physicality in a way that we typically haven't thought of Lincoln Riley teams as being able to do. They've had their troubles on the road at times this year, but for the most part, that was travel. Now, LA and Eugene, not exactly close, but it's still going up the Pacific time zone, not the cross-country travel that has plagued them in some of their Big Ten games earlier this season. So from that standpoint, I do like USC to keep it inside the number here in this spot. I was on USC last week. They did not cover, but I'm going to double down and come back again on the Trojans this week. I like the men of Troy plus the points against Oregon. That puts the flow as well, Dari, on the side of USC. You want to go with the flow and take the Trojans.
Give me those victory fingers. I think it's going to be a great game to watch, one of the best ones this weekend. USC's relevant now. They got a shot at the playoff berth. Lincoln Riley's going to dial up their offense. They're going to be able to score on Oregon in this game. They should be able to keep this game extremely close within striking distance. I was shocked seeing 9.5 points here. I think somewhere around 5, maybe 6. I like getting many points with USC's offense. Give me the Trojans here to make a cover and gain another point on Mike.
There you go. So interesting stuff playing out there. Now, at this point, we've made all our picks. You can check out Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Sanders on the DawgNation YouTube page. You can see all the other big picks. And so that's for the season-long standings and our contests against each other. Now we get a chance to expand our horizons and look a little deeper on the board to find out what other picks we might want to make. And Mike Griffith, we come back to you, and we find out, you have any best bets for us here this week?
Yeah, I got to go with another favorite. You guys probably know that Carson Beck can solve Rubik's Cube in under a minute. I think I wrote that about a half a dozen times. But did you know that Enter Sandman is probably on his iPod? And therefore, he is going to go into Virginia Tech and make a statement as Miami is fighting for a playoff spot. They're really on the outside looking in. It's very small chance for them to get in the ACC championship game. They've got to jump a lot of teams to become an at-large. Carson Beck, as we know, shows up at the end of the year, as he did for Georgia last year. I know this is a popular pick with many Georgia fans. So I'm going to go with Carson Beck in Miami to cover a 17.5-point spread. And then a bit of an upset here, Brandon, that you did not put the Georgia Tech Pitt game on our picks this week on the panel. I think all our panelists are obligated to make – this is such a big rivalry. I mean, goodness, Connor doesn't go to sleep without thinking about this great rivalry game. A little bit of the steam's going to come off it, though. Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers are going to win straight up over Georgia Tech this week.
Okay, so there you go. You may be hearing more about that one coming up in a moment. I at least have it written down. We'll see if I give it out, but I do have it written down. Jeff Sentell, what about for you?
Wow. Mike bringing up his Narduzzi charms again. Something compels me to say that I think Gunnar Stockton listens to Motley Crue before his football games. That's just a random factoid I'll draw in the dynamic there between QB1 2024 and QB1 2025 for the Dogs. I was going to pick Tech Pitt all along. I think Tech needs a hubris win to feel like they can climb the mountain the following week in the Benz against Georgia. That's only 2.5. I like Tech to cover that one. That's my best bet for the day.
Okay, there you go. Connor, how about some best bets from you?
Yeah, 1 and 2 last week, not the week that we wanted to have. I, too, will pick Georgia Tech here to cover their spread, but that is not going to be one of the best bets that I give out this week. First up, big number here. Western Kentucky is a 22.5-point favorite at LSU. I don't like the way this LSU team is going right now. They got a big win last week over Arkansas. They got Oklahoma next week. They're going to be looking forward to that. I like Western Kentucky, a pretty good team that could potentially win its conference this year. Hilltoppers to at least cover that spread there. Another team now you got to find this number quickly because it could be dropping down. Maryland is a 14.5-point favorite against Michigan. This Michigan team is leaking oil at this time of year. Justice Haynes out. Jordan Marshall, their other stud running back, maybe limited in this game. I like Maryland in a look-ahead spot here for the Michigan Wolverines. And then I'm going to double down here. I like USC at 9.5 as one of my best bets. So I give out Georgia Tech as a game that we should have picked this week, and I'll take the Yellow Jackets to cover the 2.5-point spread. And then I've got USC plus 9.5, Western Kentucky plus 22.5, and Maryland plus 14.5.
So I ask you this question seriously, Connor. Do you have any concern about Maryland? It was announced this week that Mike Locksley is returning for 2026. Sometimes there's an exhale because there have been rumors and some fake news and some things like that about Locksley's future. Now that he knows he's returning, any concern there about the exhale? Because sometimes we do see that.
I think that makes me like Maryland all the more. If you remember earlier this season, Wisconsin's athletic director and head coach, two separate people, obviously, Luke Fickell got the vote of confidence, and then they go and beat Washington outright at home as an 11-point underdog where their punter was the leading passer in the game. So that makes me like Maryland even more in this spot.
I was going to do, I like Pitt over Tech, but I'm not going to give it out just because we've already had 3 people mention it. That's probably enough on that. Plus, I don't know that I love my pick on that necessarily anyway. I do like 3. I will tell you, I was 1-1 last week. I can't seem to break out of the 1-1. It's been very hard for me to have winning weeks with my best bet. So I'm going to give you 3 this week as a way of hopefully breaking the 1-1 curse. As Jeff Sentell alluded to back during our broadcast of Go With The Flow going back to Wednesday, a lot of points potentially in the Tennessee-Florida game. I think that Tennessee needs them to cover. I've got the total at 57.5. I like Tennessee going over, Tennessee and Florida both going over the 57.5. I like the over there for that one in Gainesville. One of the things I've had success with lately is going against the college football playoff rankings in the group of 5 team that gets the love from the selection committee. This week, that's Tulane. They are favored 7.5 on the road at Temple. I'll take the Owls plus 7.5 right there. It's worked for me 2 weeks in a row. I'll take the Owls plus 7.5 against Tulane. We've had some fun with that. And speaking of the college football playoff rankings, we saw Arizona State sneak into the rankings this week at number 25. But that nod from the committee to them, I think belies what's actually going on there, where there's at least some speculation about Kenny Dillingham's future. Although Dillingham says he is staying, there's definitely speculation about Sam Levitt's future. Seems like he might be leaving. I don't don't know that the times are great right now in Tempe, but they are technically still alive in the Big 12 title race. Therefore, it dictates they must be ranked. But I think taking that ranking out for a spin might prove to be a little troublesome, even against a bad Colorado team. Colorado, 6.5-point underdog, hosting Arizona State. I actually like the Buffs to keep this one inside the number. Colorado's a disaster, but somehow, some way, I think this one can end up being a little closer. So I'll take Colorado plus 6.5 against Arizona State, over 57.5 Florida against Tennessee, and I'll take Temple plus 7.5 against the current ranked group of 6 member Tulane. Those are my 3 best bets. Dari Payro, how about you? Best bets here for the week.
Yeah, so I continue to just crush these picks.
I love it.
Just dominated, making money last week on these again. Another 3 that I'm going to give you this week. They're all going to hit. I love Houston getting minus 1.5 points against TCU. Houston's going to cover this number easily. I like a game on Friday night, which would be tonight's show for all the people out there. It's Hawaii at UNLV. Give me UNLV to cover 2.5 points. I think they're going to easily cover this number. They match up well against Hawaii, who's been on a hot streak. But UNLV's running game is going to be the difference in this one. And I have one of my close insights that has given me a heavy bet that I like, where I'm going to take the over 54.5 points in the North Texas Rice game. Over 54.5. Pound it.
How about that? And by the way, Dar, let me just also say, great broadcasting chops to think about when we're recording, when it's going to air, and give people the present tense call on the Friday night game. That's a great job. Obviously not your first time doing the show.
Yeah, I figured, it just happened to fall on that. Sometimes I've had some of these best picks I actually like. I like the Ball State game a couple weeks ago, but that was on a Wednesday night. So obviously I couldn't throw that one out there. But this kind of worked out perfect for all the listeners that are watching today can actually go play that this evening.
I love that. Great stuff. And thanks to all of you for being a part of our special taste of Go With The Flow here as a part of the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Best of luck with your picks. And speaking of the cool down, we'll get it back for the conclusion of the Friday broadcast from the R.S. Andrews Cool Down right now. And the final moments of our broadcast here from home, too, where we'll be back on Monday in our studio. By the way, huge thanks to everybody who's been working so hard on the studio while we've been gone, and to Jay and Cody and all the other folks. Kamal, I'm sure they're today, and others who've helped us do these shows from home while it's taking place. It's amazing the technological advancements we've made when it comes to being able to broadcast from home, for the most part sounding and at least closely looking like what we're able to do back in the studio. Obviously, eventually we'll have a nice studio set up in here. For now, we're still making use of just regular home space. But you all are very kind to allow us to do this every now and then, and always for a good cause. Usually it's trying to upgrade the studio in some form or fashion. That's how we do it. All right, so I'm going to take a quick strip. Let me try to speak English. I've gotten tongue-tied a few times today. I'm obviously trying to talk too fast. I'm going to take a quick trip around the comment sections, and then after that, we do have to bounce out of here today. So Monday, we'll come back and do a longer chat with you. Gary Holt wondering how long this is on Facebook, how long the starters may play on Saturday. My general feeling on stuff like this is that fans want to see one of two things. They want to see Georgia just hang 60, 70 points, or they want to see Georgia get the starters out quickly and let the backups play the lion's share of the game. Georgia typically goes about its business in a slightly different way than that. What I believe that Georgia wants is the game to hit zeros. They want the game over with as quickly as they can get it. Kirby Smart has a tendency to think about things in terms of hours and not just days. So it's not just, hey, we've got to play Georgia Tech 6 days from now. It's we've got to play Georgia Tech in, let's say 5 days and however many hours. And however many hours above, the normal amount would go a long way towards Georgia resting, recuperating as much as it possibly can. The earlier start against a lesser opponent theoretically should be of some advantage to UGA, especially since we believe that Pitt wants to play physical against Tech, and Tech may be a little surprised by what it gets from Pitt, given the fact that it's mostly been playing glorified high school teams now for several weeks. A team like Pitt that does have a pulse, even if it just got blown out by Notre Dame, is a huge step up in competition for the typical opponent for Georgia Tech here this year. So theoretically, at least, should be a little bit of an advantage. Let's see what else. Jacob Alexander mentioning that Auburn has undergone another quarterback change. Is it Deuce Knight? Is he starting? I think I saw something about this. He's going to start for the Tigers, and obviously that's a precursor to the Iron Bowl next week, which, listen, I think that there's a chance that Auburn can still be quite a lively underdog in that game. I do. I think there's at least some chance that could be true. At DawgNation.com, I saw where Devil Dog mentioned that he calls it Jim Beam and Coke is the traditional drink of the Georgia freshmen. I do feel like ever since I was a kid, now when I was a kid, I didn't know what this smell was, but I feel like you can almost smell that in the air in Georgia games. It's almost like the air is flammable. There's just so much of that around. It just goes wafting, up and down those rolling hills. I've always felt that was true. Andrew Sisson wondering about bringing back what we used to call our 1st and 15. I don't know. I obviously enjoyed it. And as you say, well, my voice is not, up to par. Maybe somebody else could do it. That's a pretty big ask for somebody else to do every single day. I just don't know. I would love to tell you, yeah, we're going to do that again. Obviously, I'd love to do as much as I possibly can, but I just don't know. If the voice ever does get better, we're probably going to have to think about, some economy of words every now and then. So I don't say that lightly, but it is probably true. Oh, yeah, Savannah Bryan mentions the rumors as it relates to Kalen DeBoer and the Penn State job. Here's what I'll tell you, is that I think this is a little bit like the Sarkisian situation, probably, in that if the rumors exist, it doesn't mean they're true, but the source of the rumors might be kind of interesting. And a lot of times, these coaches like to use this stuff not just for more money, but for the possibility of, hey, take some time to appreciate me here. And this could be in anticipation of how DeBoer feels like he'll be handled, how he'll be treated if Alabama were to miss the playoff for a second straight year, which sitting at 10 right now certainly could happen. Richard Dees reminds us it's your boy Stick D's birthday. There you go. Tomorrow during the game. So always happy to give a happy birthday out to the Deeses. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, what else? Andrew Sisson going to come check us out at the DawgNation post-game call-in show tomorrow at the UGA bookstore. Look forward to seeing you there. Missed seeing y'all last week. Bookstore had to close early because of the lateness of the hour, but we'll look forward to seeing y'all next week. Let me pop over to Facebook. I'm sorry. Let me pop over to YouTube, and then after that, we'll be gone. Angela Smith on the subject of ABC and the Georgia football team for the opening victory trailer of the Georgia-Texas game. Yeah, Georgia's put out some great stuff. And the open, they did the broadcast last week that included on ABC with the Charlie Daniels Devil Went Down to Georgia kind of remix, I guess you'll call it. I thought that was great. I thought that was great. Thank you, Angela, for bringing that up. Christy asked if my son is in the Future Dog hype video. No, unfortunately, he's probably aged out of the Future Dog category now because some of those guys were probably teenagers in there. He did go to the game last week, but he was not in that. He was, though, at the end of the post-game show last Saturday. So if you get a chance to check out that video right at the end, he'd asked me if he could come on, and so I let him come on. So he did come on there. He went with his cousin and his cousin's family to the game last week. So he had a great time there with them. All right, we are going to go. I got to get ready for a lot of stuff, to be frank with you. But we're looking forward to a great weekend all day tomorrow, including at the UGA bookstore for the final time in the regular season at the UGA bookstore for our DawgNation post-game call-in show. Can't wait for that. Excited about that. By the way, thanks for being here for our RS Andrews Cool Down. We appreciate your support of RS Andrews, who you can find online at rsandrews.com. You got big football weekend coming up. Don't let it be ruined by a plumbing emergency. For instance, if your water heater goes out or if your sinks get clogged or something like that, in many cases, RS Andrews can do this for you, boom, same day. Because after all, the RS stands for rapid service. It's literally a part of RS Andrews' name. So find them online, rsandrews.com. Have a great weekend. We'll see you tomorrow in Athens. Back here Monday for DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Thanks for being here today, and we hope you'll come back on Monday.